Welcome to the Monday Monologue. Well, today I'm going to talk about the downsides of being an audiophile. Car stereos sound terrible. And the radio in my little Honda that I drive daily has always been just, it sounds okay, but after I got used to listening to things like this 300B amp and some of my other higher end stuff, it just was really lackluster. And especially the rear speakers were just really dull. When you'd move the fader to the back, it was all sounded like Charlie Brown's parents. It was not good. And so I ordered a pair of rear speakers about a year ago and had to take the whole interior apart to get to them because, of course, they don't just bolt them in from the bottom of the trunk. They come in from the top. So you have to pull out everything. Got them all installed. And I was warned at a stereo shop that I talked to about putting them in. They didn't want to install them because they said it's probably not going to make any difference and you're not going to be happy. Well, of course I didn't listen to them. I put these nice speakers in the back. Didn't make any difference. Still sounded like crap. And I was just really disappointed, so I just kind of stopped. Well, I was on a trip recently and I really missed that my new car has the infotainment screen where it's got the navigation and hooks up your phone and stuff. Well, I saw a video about being able to install that kind of a head unit in your car. And so it didn't look too hard. The wiring didn't look too complicated. And you can install a backup camera too, which I thought would be really useful. And I plan on keeping the car for a while. So I spent the money. Here's a picture of what the head unit looks like installed. But the main thing that I wasn't ready for was how good this thing sounds. It transformed the audio in that car with the same speakers. And I really shouldn't be shocked that the amplifier and tuner and the radio receiver and the DAC stuff and all of that's inside those units could transform the sound of the speakers that were existing in the car, but they really did. And so that's one of the projects I kind of got sidetracked on. But now I've got nice sounding audio in my car and at home, and I'm using Amazon Prime HD music to listen to, both at home on my DAC with my computer and on my phone in my car. And if you're not using the service and you really enjoy music, it's really a deal. It's less than $10 a month, and you got almost an unlimited selection of music. It'll play stations that just kind of roll through music if you don't want to pick stuff. It'll play specific albums and all that kind of stuff, and you can set up your voice command to access Amazon using Alexa. I kind of stumbled into that because normally Google doesn't let you use anything but YouTube. Imagine that. Anyway, so that's something I've been dealing with and working on. So another thing I've gotten sidetracked with is a good friend of mine, is the guy with the R8, has a old Dyson 510 that he's restoring, and the wiring harness in it was just a total wreck. And so he asked me if I would help him rewire the car. And so we tore all the wiring out of that car. And first time I've ever done car wiring like that, extensively anyway. And so we're starting from scratch, building the whole thing. And even though it's a simple car, it's a really time-consuming thing. So really hadn't time to work on some of these projects like I wanted to. But I've got these car projects almost finished. I posted a video, or will soon, about repairing my 300B. The Edcore power transformer died after just a couple of years of use, which is really disheartening that something that expensive would last that short a period of time. But hey, we got this new Hammond in here. We're now able to run the CV181 tubes, and this amp sounds fantastic again. So I've got this fixed. So hopefully I'm going to be jumping into, I've got this preamp and stuff, but I know I feel like sometimes it's like squirrel and something sidetracks me, and I think the same things happen with this KT120 amp. I've really fallen in love with the idea of trying a higher powered single-ended amp. I really love the way single-ended amps sound, but sometimes speakers, like those DIY ones that I built, need a little more power to really sound good. And while they sound good with the 300B amp, the EL34 struggles a little bit with them, especially if you're wanting to listen at louder sound pressure levels. So be nice to have a little more power. I built a KT88 amp several years ago using the kind of Blue Glow KT88 Kegger formula. I actually found one of Kegger's schematics where he used a pair of 6EJ7 tubes triode strapped instead of the single 6DJ8, I think it was. I just didn't like the way it looked with these two big bottles and this one little tiny tube in the front. Just seemed weird. Anyway, it was a good sounding amp. I got to do a lot of tube rolling with it, played with some different things. I learned about, playing around with the shade feedback and how that affects the tone. So I learned a lot about tube amplifiers working on that. But I found I'm just not real crazy about the way KT88 tubes sound. I feel like they're kind of got punchy low end, and the top end is, in my opinion, kind of shouty. I mean, it's there. And when you got speakers like the clips that I use, you don't really need the top end to be emphasized. And the bass is kind of sharp, but the mid-range is missing something. And I really prefer more the way like this 300B amp sounds or my EL34 amp. Honestly, this and the EL34 amp sound similar. I mean, I think with a double blind test, people would be hard-pressed to hear the difference in them, where you can definitely hear the difference with a KT88 amp. So on that note, heard some really great things about how sweet these KT120 tubes sound. Plus, it should get me in the 14 watt range, and the design I'm going to use uses the 6EJ7 triode strapped, and there's some variants of that tube that I played with that I really like. And it's a weird number tube. I can't remember what it is. 6CA something. I can't remember. Anyway, I'll put that together when we're working on that amp. So there's a whole bunch of small bottle Pentas that you can plug in and place to that 6EJ7. So it's a great amp for tube rolling and trying different stuff with. And since Thermionic Labs offered me a pair of output transformers, and they're willing to customize them specifically to run KT120 tubes with the right gap in them, I think this is going to be a really fun project. Get to try out a new brand of output transformers. They seem high quality. I got a pair of small ones that I was going to use in that 6P1 push-pull project, which still going to work on, but they're really nice looking little transformers. And of course these are going to be maybe not quite this big size wise, but they're probably going to be more like those Hashimoto size ones that I used on my 47 Globe Tube amp. But anyway, I think it's going to be a cool project. Here's what the schematic looks like. It's super simple. They built theirs with a single power supply as a stereo integrated. And I'm planning on building it as a pair of monoblocks. The main reason I'm going to do that, and this is a good reason, not just because monoblocks are cool, that you need a 5AR4 for each channel, or two of them in parallel. And then you got to get a really monster power transformer to provide enough milliamps of current for these tubes. And so that all gets really expensive, especially when you start getting these big power transformers. And I did the math, and it's really not going to be any more expensive to buy two smaller power transformers and separate them into monoblocks. And then, thanks to a viewer that gave me this eBay link, I got a pair of these chassis on the way. And these look like some really nice extruded aluminum with redwood end plates that are going to make a really sweet looking pair of amplifiers. And so I think by the time that the parts all come in for that project, I'll be finished with this preamp, which is next on the list. And obviously if I need to fill in some content between the preamp and when I can start working on the KT120s, I got the 6P1s, I got some preamps, I got all kinds of other stuff I can work on. Oh, and the other thing I want to start playing around with is moving coil phono cartridges. Up till now, I've been using moving magnet cartridges because that's what my EAR 834-2 preamp works with and doesn't work with moving coils. And when I looked into step-up transformers so I could use that preamp with a moving coil cartridge, all I saw were these multi-$1,000 ones. And then somebody turned me on to, I think his first name's Randall, but it's R. Clayton, and that's his eBay handle. Makes these really nice boxes that allow you to switch with flip switches between different turn ratios with these Cinemag step-up transformers that, from what I've read, are really nice quality, especially for the money. So for like a little over, well, it's close to $400 with shipping, I'm getting this cool little box that I can put it between the turntable and my phono stage so I can use moving coil cartridges. And now I just got to decide which one of those I want to use. I do really like the AT microline moving magnet cartridge that I've been using, and from reading on forums, it's supposed to work really well with Techniques turntables, which is what I have. And I'm not really interested in buying some crazy acrylic, 2-foot thick platter turntable. I'm happy with my little Techniques one, but I do want to try a different cartridge. And I'm probably going to try to find the one in their line. I think I saw it that uses the same needle style, but it's a moving coil. And it's not cheap, but it's not stupid expensive. I think it was about $600, which in the scheme of things is, it is what it is. And so then I can listen to the moving magnet, the moving coil, maybe do a little video series on the differences that I hear between the two styles of cartridges, keeping everything else as close to the same as possible. So anyway, hope you're enjoying my channel. Hope you're enjoying this content. If you are, please consider joining my Patreon. That really helps me fund some of these projects. Nobody's sending me, well, I can't say that now. These guys are sending me some free output transformers, but most of this gear I end up buying out of my pocket, or somebody sends it to me. And when I do a initial video series on amplifier, I don't charge the person any labor for working on it, just the parts. And so this is kind of a labor of love. And I'll see you next week for the Monday Monologue.